In the lively city of Austin, Texas, a young woman named Emily Johnson often found herself walking through busy streets, blending in with the hum of everyday life yet carrying a private truth. At 28, Emily was independent, ambitious, and respected in her role as a marketing consultant. She had built a life many admired, a comfortable apartment in the heart of the city, a supportive circle of friends, and a promising career. On the surface, everything looked perfect, but beneath that polished exterior lived a quiet longing that only she understood. It had been nearly 2 years since Emily's last serious relationship ended. She told herself she was fine, that she needed time to focus on her work, her personal goals, and her own growth. And in many ways that was true. Emily had grown stronger, wiser, and more capable. Yet, as time passed, she began to notice subtle changes in her own behavior that revealed she hadn't been close to anyone in a while. These changes weren't obvious to most people, but anyone who understood female psychology could spot them. For Emily, the signs showed up in everyday moments. On a Friday evening, she often found herself sitting in her favorite coffee shop on South Congress Avenue, laptop open, sipping on a caramel latte. She claimed it was her way of escaping the walls of her apartment, but the truth was deeper. She found comfort in being surrounded by people. Watching strangers laugh, friends share stories, and couples hold hands gave her a quiet sense of belonging, even if she wasn't part of their conversations. She didn't approach anyone, but her glances around the room hinted at something unspoken. She missed meaningful human connection. Her co-workers at the office began noticing little changes, too. Emily, who once wore simple jeans and neutral sweaters, started experimenting with her wardrobe. One day she appeared in a soft blue blouse that brought out her hazel eyes. Another day in a tailored skirt with a touch of color in her lipstick. When her colleague Sarah complimented her on her look, Emily brushed it off with a laugh, but her heart swelled at the acknowledgement. She wasn't dressing for anyone in particular. It was more about reminding herself that she was vibrant and alive. But psychology reveals that women who haven't been close to anyone in a while sometimes find themselves unconsciously signaling openness, even if they don't say it out loud. At night, Emily's phone became a quiet outlet. She scrolled through Instagram, uploading selfies more frequently than before, adding cheerful captions, or sharing travel throwbacks from past vacations. She didn't obsess over likes, but she did smile when old friends left comments. Social media gave her a safe space to feel seen, especially during late nights when silence filled her apartment. To an outsider, her posts might look like confidence, but deep inside, they reflected a longing for acknowledgement, a craving for the kind of attention she hadn't experienced in a long time. Her friends also noticed her gentle shifts in conversations. At a rooftop brunch in Dallas, Emily listened as Amanda described how her boyfriend surprised her with a weekend getaway, and Kelly announced her engagement with a dazzling ring on her finger. Emily clapped, laughed, and cheered with them. She was genuinely happy for her friends, but when she returned home later that night, the quiet ache returned. She wrote in her journal, admitting to herself what she couldn't say aloud. "I'm not desperate for love, but I do miss being wanted. I miss the small things, the random texts, the shared meals, the feeling of someone caring for me in little ways." It wasn't envy. It was simply the echo of a human desire for closeness. Even in professional spaces, Emily's behavior revealed subtle truths. At a networking event in Houston, she found herself chatting with strangers, smiling more warmly, leaning in slightly when someone shared an interesting story. She wasn't consciously trying to flirt, but her body language betrayed an openness she couldn't hide. A laugh here, a hand brushing her hair there. These were unconscious signals, the psychology of someone who hadn't felt the spark of connection in too long. Late at night, those signals faded into quiet reflection. Emily often lay awake in her Austin apartment, staring at the ceiling while her thoughts wandered. She wasn't longing for physical intimacy as much as emotional closeness, the kind of connection that made her feel safe, valued, and understood. She imagined what it would be like to have someone call just to ask how her day went, to share a midnight snack, or to laugh over silly jokes. These were the small but powerful desires of someone who carried strength in public but vulnerability in private. On weekends, she sought opportunities to be around people, even outside work. In San Antonio, she joined a volunteer food drive, where she met new faces and shared light-hearted conversations. When one of the volunteers made her laugh, Emily noticed herself leaning into the moment, enjoying the spark more than she expected. She wasn't falling for anyone there, but she realized how refreshing it felt to be noticed. Psychology shows that when women haven't been close to anyone in a long while, they can become more receptive to playful attention. Not out of desperation, but because it feels like a reminder of something deeply human. Yet Emily's life wasn't defined by absence. She kept herself busy with hobbies, solo trips, and long walks through parks. Her independence was genuine. She loved the feeling of achieving goals on her own and discovering her own strength. When her elderly neighbor once asked why she was always on the move, Emily laughed and replied, "I just like keeping busy." But privately, she hoped that one day she would share that busyness with someone who matched her pace, someone who saw her independence as a strength rather than a shield. One day, during a business seminar in Chicago, Emily sat next to a man named Daniel. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, filled with laughter, mutual respect, and shared experiences. For the first time in years, Emily felt a natural spark that wasn't forced. She didn't jump ahead in her mind or imagine a future with him. She simply enjoyed the moment, realizing how refreshing it felt to connect without pressure. It reminded her that meaningful attention doesn't always come in dramatic gestures. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through genuine conversation and presence. Later that evening, Emily walked along the Chicago Riverwalk, the city lights reflecting on the water. She thought about her journey, the quiet signs of longing she had shown over the past 2 years, the moments of loneliness, the subtle ways she sought connection. She realized those signs weren't weaknesses. They were simply proof of her humanity. It was natural to crave closeness, to long for someone's attention, to miss the small joys of companionship. None of that made her less independent, less strong, or less valuable. Emily smiled to herself as the wind brushed her hair. She wasn't ashamed of her longing anymore. She understood that it was part of being human, part of what made life beautiful. Her independence had given her strength, but her longing reminded her that strength and vulnerability could coexist. She didn't need someone to complete her, she was already whole, but she welcomed the thought of sharing her wholeness with another. Her story is not one of desperation or weakness, but of balance. Women like Emily often give subtle signals when they haven't.